What do you do when the person using a court order against you is the grandmother of your own child? I need you to hold that question while I tell you this story, because the answer took me 2 years and one witness statement I did not see coming to find. There is a moment in this story, a specific moment in a courtroom in Coventry on a Thursday afternoon in March, when a man sat in a witness chair and said something about his own mother that changed the entire shape of the proceedings. I want to tell you what he said, but first I need to tell you what the 14 months before that Thursday had done to me, because exhausted is the wrong word and destroyed is closer, but still not quite right. My name is Megan. I am 27 years old. I have a daughter named Iris who is 5. Her father and I separated when Iris was 2, following the kind of relationship that ends not in a single dramatic event, but in a long, slow accumulation of incompatibilities that one day achieves critical mass. His name is Daniel. He is not the antagonist of this story. He is a man I co-parent with, imperfectly and mostly adequately, and who has been, for the most part, trying to navigate the same situation I am navigating. The antagonist is his mother. Her name is Sandra. Sandra is 59 years old and lives in a semi-detached house in a village outside Coventry, with a garden she is extremely proud of, and an opinion about everything that she is also extremely proud of. She loves Iris. I want to say that, because it is true, and because this story is easier to tell and easier to hear if I say it plainly at the start. Her love for Iris is not in question. What is in question is whether love authorises you to use the legal system as an instrument of control over the child's mother. Sandra's answer to that question was yes. Mine was different. The contact order had been established during the separation proceedings. It granted Daniel fortnightly contact, with additional provisions for grandparent contact, specifically that Iris would spend 1 weekend per month at Sandra's house. This was not unusual. It was not on its face unreasonable. Sandra had been a significant presence in Iris's life. The order reflected that. The order was also, from the first month, something Sandra used in a way the court had not intended. The first breach was mine, technically. In month 2, Iris had a temperature of 39.2 on the Friday afternoon of Sandra's scheduled weekend. I called Sandra to explain. Sandra said she had made plans. I said Iris was unwell. Sandra said that minor illness did not constitute grounds for missing a court-ordered contact weekend, and that she would be reporting the failure to comply to her solicitor. She was, and I want to be clear about this, correct that a temperature alone does not automatically exempt a parent from a contact order. She was also choosing to respond to a sick 2-year-old by threatening legal action. I noted the distinction. Now I want to stop, because I think you might be building a picture of this story that I want to complicate before we go further. You might be thinking, grandparent who loves her grandchild, contact order that she is technically entitled to enforce, mother who, perhaps overprotected an ill child. You might be thinking the truth of this is somewhere in the middle, and you might be right that the truth is usually somewhere in the middle. Here is what I want you to hold as a counter. What does the middle look like when one party has the money to enforce the order legally and the other does not? What does reasonable become when it is weaponized by someone with a solicitor on retainer and a willingness to use it? Because that is the thing that almost broke me. Not Sandra loving Iris. Sandra knowing that I could not afford to fight every letter her solicitor sent. By the time Iris was 3, Sandra had filed 2 formal complaints with the court about my compliance with the contact order. Both were investigated, both were found to have insufficient grounds for formal enforcement, both cost me money I did not have for legal advice, and hours I did not have for correspondence, and the specific anxiety that comes from operating inside a system where someone can make a complaint about you to a judge and you have to respond formally and professionally, and without letting Iris see that any of it is happening. I stopped sleeping properly in approximately March of Iris's 3rd year. Not suddenly, gradually, the way sleep goes when anxiety becomes the default setting. A few hours at a time, at irregular intervals, with a specific quality of wakefulness at 2 in the morning that makes everything feel unsolvable. My GP prescribed medication. I have not mentioned the medication before because it felt like a private detail, but it is relevant now because Sandra mentioned it in her 3rd complaint to the court. She had, through Daniel, become aware that I was on medication for anxiety, and she referenced it as a concern about my capacity to parent effectively. She used my mental health as evidence against me. My friend's name is Karen. She is 34 years old, lives 3 streets away, and has known me since secondary school, with the specific intimacy of someone who has been present for enough of your life to understand it without explanation. She began, in a quietly practical way, doing things that I could not ask her to do, because I did not know how to ask. She drove me to appointments, she sat with Iris when I had solicitors' calls, she brought meals, sometimes, just placed in a bag on the doorstep with a note that said, "Eat something." She never asked whether I was okay in the way that invites a dishonest answer. She just stayed nearby and let me know she was staying. Karen also did something else, something I did not know about until 7 months into the situation. The third complaint led to a CAFCAS assessment. The CAFCAS officer was a man named Simon who came to the house twice and interviewed Iris once, in the living room, in a way that was gentle enough that Iris came away from it, asking if Simon was coming back, because he knew a good game involving cushions. Simon's report was 38 pages. He found that Iris was settled, attached, and well cared for. He found no grounds for the concerns Sandra had raised about my parenting capacity. He recommended that the contact arrangements continue as ordered and added a note, a specific, formal note, observing that the pattern of complaints brought by the paternal grandmother appeared disproportionate to the documented evidence, and that the court should consider whether the complaint process was being used in a way consistent with Iris's welfare. The court should consider. Sandra responded to the CAFCASS report by withdrawing the third complaint and immediately filing a fourth. The fourth complaint alleged that I had been coaching Iris against the paternal family, that Iris had made comments during the contact weekend that reflected negatively on Sandra and which Sandra believed to have been planted. It alleged parental alienation. It sought a variation of the contact order to increase Sandra's time with Iris and to include a provision for direct communication between Sandra and Iris's school, without my involvement. Direct communication with the school. Without my involvement. I instructed a solicitor named Rachel through a legal aid application that took 3 weeks to process. Rachel was 41, had handled family law for 15 years, and said, when she read the complaint, that the alienation allegation would need to be robustly challenged. She said it with the steadiness of someone who has seen this tactic before and knows its weaknesses. She asked me for everything I had, every email, every text, every letter from Sandra's solicitor, every school record, every medical appointment log. I had all of it. I had been keeping it since month 3 because Karen had told me to. Karen had said, document everything, date everything, keep it somewhere she cannot access. I had done exactly that. Rachel said, "This is a well-kept file." I said I had help. The hearing was listed for a Thursday in March. 2 days before the hearing, Rachel received a supplementary witness statement, not from Sandra's solicitor, from Daniel. Daniel had submitted a statement voluntarily, without being asked by either party, through his own solicitor. He had, apparently, reached a decision over the previous 3 months that the complaints had escalated beyond what he was willing to be associated with. The statement described, in specific and dated terms, 4 conversations he had had with Sandra in which she had discussed the complaint process, not as a welfare concern, but as a mechanism. His words, a mechanism for making Megan's life difficult until she agreed to a more flexible contact arrangement that gave Sandra greater access. A mechanism. Sandra's solicitor challenged the statement's admissibility. The judge, a woman named Victoria, admitted it on the grounds of direct relevance to the welfare assessment. She read it in the hearing in sequence with an expression that I can only describe as controlled. Then she looked at Sandra's solicitor and said, "I would like your client to respond to the characterization of the complaint process as a mechanism in Mr." She caught herself in Daniel's statement. Sandra's solicitor asked for time. Victoria gave her 20 minutes. The 20 minutes produced nothing that improved Sandra's position. Victoria's ruling was comprehensive. She dismissed the alienation allegation on the grounds that the evidence did not support it, and that the CAFCASS report had explicitly found no pattern of negative influence. She found that the 4 complaints brought over 14 months represented a pattern of disproportionate litigation that had caused demonstrable harm to Iris's primary carer. She upheld the existing contact arrangements and added a specific provision. a formal prohibition on further applications by Sandra, without leave of the court, on the grounds that the pattern constituted an abuse of process. Leave of the court. Sandra cannot file another complaint without the court's permission. I sat in the car park outside the court for a long time afterward. Karen was with me. She had driven me there and she sat in the passenger seat while I tried to locate the appropriate feeling for the moment, which turned out to be something between relief and a very large tiredness that I'd been waiting for somewhere to go. Karen did not say anything for a while, then she said, "Now go home and sleep." I said, "I don't know if I remember how." She said, "You'll remember." She was right. I slept for 11 hours the night of the ruling, properly, without the 2 a.m. ceiling staring and the unsolvable quality of things. Iris came in at 7 and climbed into the bed and fell back asleep against my shoulder, and the room smelled of the particular warmth of a child who has just woken up. And I lay there in the early light and tried to remember the last time I had felt something like this. The contact order detail, the one I mentioned at the beginning, 1 weekend per month at Sandra's house. It continues. Victoria did not remove it. Iris still goes. She comes home on Sunday evening and shows me whatever she has made in Sandra's garden. And I ask about it, and I listen, and I say, "That sounds lovely." And I mean it, in the complicated way you mean things when the situation is better than it was, but not simple. Here is the thing I have not resolved. Karen told me, 2 weeks after the ruling, what she had done in the 7 months I had not known about. She had been documenting, not just filing my correspondence. She had kept a personal log of dates, observations, the emotional condition she found me in when she arrived, the specific things I had said in the months when the complaints were coming most frequently. She had not shown it to me because she had not wanted to alarm me. She had shown it to Rachel because she thought Rachel should have it. Rachel had used it in the welfare submissions. Victoria had referenced it in the judgment, a third-party contemporaneous account of the impact of the litigation pattern on the primary carer. Karen had documented me, without telling me, in order to protect me. I do not know whether I should have been asked. I know it helped. I know that without it, Victoria's welfare finding might have looked different. I know that Karen did it from the specific love of someone who has known you since secondary school and understands that sometimes protecting you requires doing the thing you would not have agreed to. So here is my question for you, and I genuinely want to know the answer. If your closest friend had kept a log of your emotional state over 7 months without telling you, in order to use it as evidence in your favour, how would you feel about that? Would you feel protected, grateful, invaded, all three at once? Because I have felt all three at different moments, and I am still not sure which one is the right one. And I think that uncertainty is worth sitting with because it tells you something important about the relationship between privacy and protection that the legal system does not have language for. Comments are open. Tell me what you think.